So as you can see, I am in my car, and that just means it's another car talk with Kare.
3, 2, 1.
I'm sweaty. I didn't think this through with the series of what that means for warmer weather. I did bring my microphone. If you see me just progressively get more moist, don't worry about it. It's fine. I have a little snack. I had a coffee and 2 eggs today, and it is almost 3 o'clock. So today's car talk is going to be about feeling behind in your 20s. I feel like it's a very common experience for people in their 20s to feel behind because it's just like there's so many different paths that people can be taking in their 20s. And not only that, there's also the societal expectation that's placed on people in their 20s of what their 20s should be looking like. The fact that society is always like being in your 20s is the best time of your life, and how much pressure that puts on people in their 20s. As someone who is single, never been in a relationship, living at home with their parents, and in their mid-20s, feeling behind is something I know all too well. Being in public vlogging is such an interesting experience for me. If you are also feeling behind, just know you're not alone, because it's a very common experience, especially in your 20s, but also in any part of your life. Comparison doesn't have an end date. The 3 buckets that people typically feel behind in, especially in their 20s, is relationships, finances, and their career. And I'm going to go into each one of them, and hopefully I don't die of heat stroke before I do. Now that I think about it, did I move my seat the last time I filmed this? Because I'm like, this is really close. First off, relationships. As someone who has never been in a relationship and is nearing 26, I feel like this is a bucket in which I feel behind in literally all the time. Because not only am I constantly reminded by all my friends and my family that I'm single, but it's also, I'm constantly reminded that I'm single and have never been in a relationship. Because everyone's like, don't worry, you'll find love when it's your time. And I'm like, great, when is my time gonna start? Because I got a biological clock that's ticking. If you asked me when I was younger what I wanted my plan to be, at 28 I wanted to be married. Before I turned 30 I wanted to have my first kid. So it's like, I'm 26, I don't have a partner. How is that timeline going to be upheld? Because at the same time, before I get married, I want to know my partner and date them for at least 4 years. And I'm like, well, I should have met them 2 years ago, and it's a little too late now, isn't it? All I have to say is I feel like I put such high expectations on myself that I'm like, I can't really uphold this anymore at this point in my life, and I feel behind in the expectations I set for myself, as arbitrary as they are. There's a group of people walking by, so I'm gonna take a ride. Because I've also never experienced romantic love, I feel like I'm missing out on like a part of life that everyone talks about, and especially like in your 20s, I feel like it's a very popular thing to like go through heartbreak, find the one, lose the one, whatever, and I have not experienced any of that. In my platonic relationships, as I mentioned in my friendship in my 20s video, also a car talk, linked up there if you want to see it. Oh my gosh, I am sweating. Platonically, it's like society expects your friendships in your 20s to look like Friends, the TV show. I do not have a friend group. I have multiple single friends that don't know each other and are not connected. And that's not necessarily what society expects your 20s to look like in terms of friendships. They want you to have a friend group. They want you to go out. They want you to do this and that. I'm not gonna harp on it for much longer because I have a whole video on it if you want to watch. But like in terms of like relationships, I feel like your 20s is where society tells you you're supposed to be dating around, you're supposed to be living life, you're supposed to be finding the one, you're supposed to be getting married, all of that stuff. I mean, in all these buckets, I know logically I'm not behind, because like, behind compared to what, you know? Like, I know it, but I don't feel it, you know? And I feel like that's a very big difference of like, logically, I know I'm not behind, but in my brain, in my heart, I feel like I am. The next bucket is financially, and I just feel behind because a lot of my friends either already own houses or are buying houses or can buy a house and they just choose not to. And just like things like that, where everyone that I'm surrounding myself with already have or can have the financial milestones that people strive to have, and they're all around my age, which makes it hard for me to be like, oh, it's because they're older. Because if they're around my age and they're already buying like multi-million-dollar houses, it's like, okay, so what am I doing wrong with my life? That seeps into a lot of different things, because especially in your 20s, the range of income varies greatly. Like, you could have someone making like $0 or making minimum wage at the same time when you have someone making multi 6 figures or like even 7 figures maybe. I think like the wide discrepancy becomes more prevalent in your 20s. The last bucket is like career. As someone who, I don't know what I want to do, it doesn't help that I don't know what I want to do in terms of a career path. I don't know if I'm on the right career path because I don't have one defined for me. I'm just going through the motions right now and just hoping for the best. I feel like this is very unlike me 5-10 years ago, where I would have a plan. I always had a plan. Right now, as Phoebe says in Friends, I don't even have a plan. Growing up, I had this idea of what my 20s was going to look like, and currently my life looks a lot different than what I thought my 20s was gonna look like 10 years ago. Every time there's a stranger, I just eat a fry. Career path wise, it's like I don't really know what I want to do, and I don't even think I have a dream job. So it's hard for me to like strive for a dream job when I don't actually have one, because like my dream job is like not working. My dream job is making enough money and not a 9 to 5 that I can spend my 9 to 5 doing whatever I want. Like what that looks like, it could be working for like a nonprofit or doing something that like fills my cup versus something that I have to do because I need to sustain the lifestyle that I want to live. Like I know I'm not necessarily behind. The comparison game is making me feel like I am, and obviously should not be comparing yourself to anybody. It's easier said than done. Growing up, by this point in my life, I expected myself to be in a loving long-term relationship, almost getting married, getting ready to have kids, buying a house, settling down, and I haven't accomplished any of that. But at the same time, if I tell my younger self all the things that I have accomplished as of right now, there are things where they'd be disappointed. Like, yes, I'd probably be disappointed that I'm not in a loving relationship, but at the same time, I probably would be really proud of myself that I solo traveled, right? Like, there's a give and take there, where there are some things where I would probably be sad to hear. Other things where I'd be like, wow, I didn't even think about that growing up, because like that's not something that would have even crossed my mind. A lot of the sentiment of feeling behind is based off of societal expectations, right? Because society says by your 30s, so you have to do this in your 20s. Should be married, you should have a house, you should have a stable career that you love and that you're progressing quickly in. You should have already traveled the world, you should be settling down and becoming like more serious and more stable in your life. There's all of these things that society says that you should be doing or you should have done. Everyone is on their own paths. Just because you haven't accomplished one or any of the things doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. The only right path is the one that you're currently on. Like I said, logically, I know that. Physically, in the heart, does not stick, has not been sticking. The pressure that society places on your 20s, where it's like, this is the most pivotal time of your life. The seeds that you sow in your 20s are going to blossom when you're older. Do you know how much pressure that puts on us? Like, if you're not consistently investing in your 20s, you're going to be financially behind when you're older. If you haven't bought a house before you turn 30, where are you going to live? You're going to pay rent all of your life? Like, if you're not in a loving relationship, what are you going to do? Your biological clock's ticking. You got to have a kid sometime. And it's just like all of these things where society's like, you should have this figured out already. But it's like, it's okay if you don't. Society tends not to celebrate the people who've taken the beaten path and taken a path that isn't standard or normal. Like, I know someone who's 45 who literally just changed careers completely, and society doesn't really applaud that until they turn successful, right? If it becomes they did not follow the beaten path and they were successful, then that's when we applaud it. But if it's they didn't follow the beaten path and they failed, then it's like, well, they probably should have stayed on the path that they were on. And that's bad. That's not good. The person I know who's completely changing career paths, like, I respect that because that takes balls. Like, that takes a lot of guts to do. It really went to show me that it's never too late to change or do something. If you're 60 and you've never run a mile in your life, you could change that. Or like, if you're 50 and you wake up one day and you're like, I hate the career path that I'm on, you can change that. Or if you're like 45 and you're like, dude, I just want to find love, you can change that. There are very few things in life that are permanent. Like, there are very few things that if you wake up one day and you're like, I hate this, I want to change, that you won't be able to change. There are things that obviously, yes, will take longer for you to change. Like, if you hate your house and you want to buy a new one, that will take longer for you to change, but you can still change. Like, it's not a permanent thing in your life. I feel like the reason why a lot of people in their 20s feel more behind than like in other decades of their life is the fact that you're in your 20s is the first time where you see people that you grew up with diverge from the same path that you're taking, right? Because like up until you're basically 18, more or less, you're probably going to be in high school. You probably have similar paths, and it's not going to vary that much. But then like after you graduate college, that's when things start differing and people start taking different paths. Some people can go off and get married. Some people can go buy a house. Some people can focus on their careers. Some people can just take a gap year. Some people can travel abroad and like do whatever they want to. That's the first time in life where it's like truly everyone can do whatever they want. There's not a structure there. In your 30s and beyond, I feel like that becomes the new norm, where you're like, oh yeah, this person's just traveling with their life, versus like some people are focusing on their career. And after your 20s is when the paths that you take really start to flourish, in the sense of like, if you spend your 20s focused on your career, in your 30s, you're probably going to be very well off in your career. If you spend your 20s focusing on your relationships, then your relationships in your 30s are probably going to be really healthy. Or if you spend your 20s traveling, then in your 30s, you're going to have a lot of stories to tell. You're going to have had a lot of experiences. All people forget to remember is that when you're older and you look back at your life now, you're probably going to be like, why was I so stressed? Or like, why was I so XYZ? Like, for example, if I look back when I was 15, my biggest worry was probably getting my driver's license, my grades, maybe who was going to ask me to a school dance, right? But now, in my 20s, I can drive. I don't care about what I got when I was 15. Like, could I tell you any of my grades when I was 15? No. Can I tell you a single thing I learned in school when I was 15? No. Do I care that no one asked me to a dance? No. Like, do I remember what I wore to dances? If I try hard enough, probably. The things that I was so stressed out about and so worried about, and like things that I felt so behind in, because let me tell you, 15-year-old me really believed that I was behind in all of my classes. I wasn't going to get good grades, which meant I wasn't going to get into a good college, which meant I was not going to get a good job. And look at me. I went to the college that I wanted to. I have a job. Is it my dream job? Probably not. Do I have a dream job? Probably not. Did I know that when I was 15? Probably not. Like, when I was 15, I was supposed to be a doctor by now. And now I'm not even in medicine. When you look back at it, you realize that nothing is that serious. Especially when you're younger, in your teens, everything feels like the end of the world. Every small thing feels big because you just haven't had a lot of experiences to compare them to. Now, being in my 20s, it's like the things that I used to think were world-ending and big when I was younger doesn't apply now. I feel like the things that I think now are world-ending and stressful, when I'm 30 and when I'm 35, I'll look back and be like, wow, so none of that actually mattered at all. I feel like my biggest comfort in life is none of it is that serious. Like, none of it is that serious. Nothing's that permanent. I feel like there are very few things in life that are very serious, very permanent. And like, obviously those things need to be handled with care, but like things outside of that, it's like, what does it matter if I take the wrong path? Because there's no right or wrong path. There's just the path that I'm on. And like, I just gotta roll with the punches. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to freak out at every small thing that I do, I am going to spend my whole life stressed. Feeling behind really leads into that, where I'm just perpetually stressed, like, oh, this person is making 5 times my income. This person is married and has a house with their significant other. This person is traveling the world. I feel like recently a lot of the people around me have been moving forward with their life, which makes me feel like I'm falling behind. Like, a lot of people in my life are graduating, they're going back to school, they're getting new jobs, they're buying houses, they're getting married, and I'm just like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm sticking with status quo. It makes me feel like I'm not doing enough, and that is not the mindset I want to be in. I want to be able to celebrate the people around me and their accomplishments. Because I'm so focused on I feel behind, I can't genuinely, with my whole heart, do that. Feeling behind, especially in your 20s, is just so aggravating, because it's like, there's no reason anyone should feel behind. Truly, there's no reason. Like, feeling behind is just what society wants you to think that you are when you're not, because there is no behind, because life is not a comparison game. Life is just life. It's not that serious. It's not that deep. It's just how the world rotates. I think that's the end of my monologue for now. Let me know if this video was entertaining at all. If you're also in your 20s and you feel behind, just know you're not alone. If you're in your 20s and you don't feel behind, please leave in the comments below how you do not feel behind, because I would love to learn from you. And if you're not in your 20s, leave in the comments down below how your 20s went. Would love to hear about it. Would love to learn what you learned. I am not as sweaty as I once was when this began, but I'm also getting warm and hungry. So I'm gonna go. I will see you in the next one. If you haven't I did this out of order. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't already and you want to, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below. What is my outro? What is going on? I hope you liked the video. If you haven't already, feel free to give it a like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!